Good morning. Welcome to St. Paul's Universalist Church on this rainy Sunday. April showers, right? Anyway, we're very happy to have you with us. I have several announcements. It's Pledge Sunday, where we, look to keep the lights on, keep the heat on, and various other things. And if there's anyone that has never pledged before and would like to, please see Julie Smith over there in the corner. It's her favorite job, but a necessary one. For those of you who have previously pledged, on the back table on the way out with the traffic pattern, there are new envelopes and pledge cards. Please fill out the cards that come in the box if you take one, and just leave them on the table for Julie. The important thing to remember is, although we do our pledging now, those envelopes you won't have to use till July 1st. So if you had envelopes last year, continue to use those until the new church calendar begins in July. We will be resuming coffee hour next Sunday, right? First Sunday of May? Yes. We'll do it the same way we did last fall to start with. I know many of us have received the vaccination, and that's great. But I think it's 3 to a table, or of course, if it's the people that you live with, obviously, you can have more than that at the table, and we'll go from there. And lastly, Mark and I would like to meet very briefly with any board members who are present immediately following the service. That's all I have. Let us proceed to our musical call to worship. She said, "I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples." Let's open with the lighting of the chalice. And as we do so, I invite you to join me in the words. We light the chalice for all who are here and all who are not, for all who have ever walked through our doors, for those who may yet find this spiritual home, and for those who can't even yet imagine. For each of us and for us all, may this flame burn warm and bright. And our first hymn is "We Would Be One." I believe the first 2 verses. Please remain standing and join me in the words of affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another and with our God. A prayer that was adapted from the words of the UU pastor, Reverend Victoria Weinstein, and I'd like to invite you to join me in prayerful meditation. We have been given the bounty of this beautiful day. And we have been given the gift of the worship tradition that draws us together in this house of hope and memory, of learning, of healing, of growing, and of serving. We lift up grateful hearts. We have been given the inspiration of our brothers and sisters in faith who walk with us the path of the free religious life, who companion us in our joys and our sorrows, and who are ours by some design of fate or necessity to care for and to love, to forgive and to cherish for this time of our lives. And we lift up our grateful hearts. We have been given minds with which to wonder and to reason. And we have been given voices to sing and to speak and to shout against injustice. And we have hands to work and to build the better world we would have for ourselves and for our children. We are asked to use them all in the service of love and justice. We lift up grateful hearts. We have been given the divine spark as children of God, all, whose health and wholeness requires us to tend to the life of the soul. In our rushing and our doing, may we not forget whose we are and what we truly are, not human beings having a spiritual experience, but spiritual beings having a human experience. And for this we lift up grateful hearts. And finally, we ponder this mystery together, glad for one another, blessed by the abundance of our lives, and called to give abundantly of ourselves to it. Amen. Let us now share a moment of silence where we listen to the wisdom of our hearts and minds.
Good news. Those of you who sat through the longer than average sermon last Sunday, my gift is a short homily. So you picked a good day to come. These past 12 months or so sometimes feel like they've been about 3 years long, don't they? It's been a long year, a different year. And yet this church has endured. We did a hard right turn or left turn, but a hard turn. We went online, learning as we went, so that people could still feel a part of this community. Because that's what a church is. It's not the building, it's the community of believers, the people who attend and support it. And Mark and I provided additional content through last summer at a time when we would traditionally be closed. And we found a way to do services in person in the fall safely. At a time when many were relying on streaming over the internet, and many still are. But we've kind of set a bar. Our neighbors in Barneveld are considering doing what we've been doing, and they've asked for a copy of our safety plan. So another good thing that's come out of that. And there are other unintended benefits to what we've had to go through. For example, some of you know this, some of you may not. There are people who subscribe to and watch our online content who would not otherwise be able to do so, either because of poor health, distance, or both. Longtime members of this congregation can join us again. I know that I mention this from time to time, but when I first came to St. Paul's in January of 2002, I felt so blessed to have found a spiritual home that allowed me to nurture my beliefs without telling me what to believe, that allowed me to ask the tough questions and to seek the answers that rang true for me. A community where I could reflect and change my mind in the presence of new insights. And I have changed my mind. I have adapted my thinking and assimilated new secular and spiritual information in my faith journey, as I think many of you have as well. And back then, in 2002, I had, Dawn, my wife and I, we had just missed the 150th anniversary of St. Paul's. People expressed concern that the church wouldn't last another 5 years. But you know what? It did. And then another 5. And then another 5. And next month, it will be 170 years. This church, this community, has survived because of the dedication of those who have and do call it their spiritual home. Some have come and gone. Some have been here for decades, perhaps their whole lives. But the bottom line is, as the phrase goes, we keep on keeping on. Now, if this church ran solely on love, dedication, good work, and good feelings, we'd never have to worry about staying open. The truth, of course, is like any other institution. We require human and financial resources to keep the lights on, as it were. And this is why we have Pledge Sunday every year. Now, before I go any further with that, I want to step back and share 2 passages of Scripture with you. Unitarian Universalism, in its modern form, is not strictly a Christian religion, but our historical roots definitely spring from the Judeo-Christian tradition. And here are a couple readings from the New Testament. The first is from the 6th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus said, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And then from the writings of St. Paul, the namesake of our church, in his first letter to the church in Corinth, he writes, "Now there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of service, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each of us is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit. To another gifts of healing by the one Spirit. To another the working of miracles. To another prophecy. To another the discernment of spirits. To another various kinds of tongues. And to another interpretation of tongues. All these are activated by one and the same Spirit, who allots to each one individually, just as the Spirit chooses." So reflecting back on those passages, Jesus speaks of heavenly treasure and about how our treasure pointing the way to, our treasure points the way to where our hearts lie. In other words, what we truly value is reflected in our deepest feelings. And ultimately, that will always be where we tend to direct our resources. Paul talks about the many gifts of the Spirit. Each of us has their own set of gifts, their own set of talents. And as I thought about this, especially the passage from Matthew, it occurred to me that the thing about heavenly treasure and spiritual gifts that make them different from the traditional material world is that the more you share them, the greater they become. They're not meant to be locked in a bank. We are called to share what we have with others and with the world. One more scriptural insight from the 5th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all the house. In other words, our lights are meant to shine. It's no fun asking for money every year. It's not especially comfortable being asked for money. And things may be tighter this year for many of us than they were before the pandemic. We don't have any sort of requirement for financial commitment from those who attend here. There is no tithing in the Unitarian Universalist tradition. You can give as much or as little as you wish or can afford. I guess my pitch as minister on Pledge Sunday, if I were to stand up and make one, and I guess that's what I am doing, I'm standing up and making one, is this. If this church, and I say this to those of you sitting here and also those of you who will watch this later on the internet, if this church, if this community is a source of inspiration to you, if it is a spiritual home to you, a place of fellowship, a place of belonging, a place where you can seek and find other seekers, a place that nourishes your mind, your spirit, and or your soul, please consider supporting it. And for that I thank you, and may it be so. Our closing hymn is "The Fire of Commitment."
sets our mind and soul ablaze. When our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way. When we leave with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment, and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we leave with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment, and our future can begin.
If it ever comes up at trivia night, that is your minister's favorite hymn. At least out of the new hymnal supplement. I like some of the old hymns too. I close our service with these words of the great British statesman Winston Churchill. He said, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." As I extinguish our chalice, I invite you to join me in the words. The flame is extinguished, but not our hopes for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all. Please join us for our benediction.